I think this is something else that I think all leaders need to be really cognizant of is, and I talk about this all the time with my team. There's another old aphorism, right? That feedback is a gift. That's actually very true, right? And if you have an employee who is having a behavioral problem or a performance issue or whatever it is, as a supervisor, you have an obligation. You have a moral responsibility, I would say, to tell that person that they're screwing up, right? Because you need to give them the opportunity to course correct. And I've seen that in my career where, you really give someone a kick in the rear end, and some of them will take off, right? And they'll fix the problem that you talked about. Some of them won't. But you gave them the chance, and then you can move on and do what you need to do. But, if someone is ever surprised by being terminated, you didn't do your job as a leader.
I agree with that. Yeah. That's rule number one, isn't it?
Yeah. It's really important. And I think one of my mentors is very fond of constant and continuous feedback, right? This should not be an end-of-year performance review discussion where the employee finds out that, we're not happy with your performance, right?
Yeah.
I have weekly one-on-ones with all of my direct reports, and once a quarter we have a sit-down, a coaching session separate from the business, just to say, what's going well, what's not going well, where are you focusing? And I think having that discipline of constant feedback so that everyone knows where they stand, what they're doing well at, what they need to improve on is the best way to run the organization.
I've always found that in some ways the hardest thing with that process is actually the implementation side. So how you at scale continue the improvement through taking, because it's you have to be very deliberate, don't you? To sit there on the Monday and think, right, what do I need to improve on this week?
Yep.
Before you know it, you've got 300 emails, this to do, mounting lists, things at home. So what, have you got a process for that? Or?
Yeah, I do. And I wouldn't say that I invented this myself. The mentor I'm referring to is a retired lieutenant general by the name of Rick Lynch, who has written a number of books on leadership. He has a wonderful new book out called We're Not Robots. And he talks about this process in the book. He'd given me this coaching advice beforehand, but I sit down with my team and I ask them, what's going well, what's not going well, and where are you focusing on in the next 90 days, right? Those are 3 questions. They all know those are 3 questions. I have my notes from the last time we talked, what they told me last time, right? And then I have my thoughts on what's going well and what's not going well. Ideally, what you hear from them is what you think is going well and what's not going well, right? Because then you know that they're self-aware.
Yeah.
I have another really dear friend, Bob Azelby, worked with me at Amgen, who likes to say, are you consciously incompetent or are you unconsciously incompetent, right? Do you know you're screwing up or not? And when my team says, well, I think I'm really doing well at this and I think I'm not really doing well at that, and that's what I think, then I know, okay, they're self-aware. And that's the first step, I think, in fixing what the area of improvement is. If the person says something that I don't agree with or they miss something that I think is a problem, I tell them, right? And by having this regularly and building on it, most of the time, the areas of strength and the areas needing improvement are the same as they were the last time you spoke, right? Yeah. But hopefully they're continuing to improve. And it's an opportunity for us to reflect on, okay, how are we doing on these things, right? The priorities change a lot more, but that also gives me some insight in terms of where they're focused, and it's an opportunity for them to ask me for help if they need something too.
And are you someone that retrospectively looks inwards frequently as a leader to think, oh, how can I improve? Or is it something you've accrued over time from just life experience?
Yeah, I think that every successful person has to have a growth mindset. Yeah, right.
Agreed.
We all have
comfortable failure.
Yeah, absolutely, and with feedback, right?
Yeah.
But we all have certain strengths and traits, but most of those are acquired, right? And that means that they're modifiable. And I'm constantly looking for opportunities to continue to grow. I have a lot of mentors. I've had them throughout my career, and I attribute a lot of my success to my mentors, starting with my father, who was an incredible human being, and he was a tough dad, but he made me who I am. Mm-hmm. And I think constantly looking for what could I be doing to be better, to grow, and having people around you who have the courage and you trust enough when they that they can tell you, hey, you're screwing up, or, I think if you did this, this would really make a big difference. And I think about like one of my mentors is the chairman of my board now. And we're very close, and he's not hesitant about telling me when he needs, I think that I should do something differently. And I appreciate that, and I embrace it. It's not always easy to hear, right? But he's helping to make me better. Yeah. And trust is really important in those relationships, right? Because when he says, Frank, you need to change this, right? I know that that's coming from a place of love, that he's trying to help me be successful. He's not just saying that to be a jerk, right?
And you mentioned the mentors. So you said that you had that your whole career.
Yeah.
So is that different mentors for different aspects, or is it just an evolution of different people to take different things from?
Well, so I think about mentorship as falling in three broad buckets, right?
Yeah.
I think that people often have skills-based mentors, right? I'm good at X, you're not good at X. You come to me and say, hey, will you teach me how to do X, right? I want to learn how to play tennis, right? Yeah. That's a form of mentorship, right? Then, I think some people have the sort of advocate mentors. We call them sea daddies in the Navy. The guys who are sort of promoting you within the organization. I'm not a big fan of that. I want to get ahead. Based
you mean
on
without basis or something?
Not necessarily without basis, but someone senior in the organization who's sort of pushing your agenda.
Yeah.
I want to get promoted on my own merits. And if something happens to that person and they're seen as your sea daddy, that can be pretty damaging for you, right? So I don't encourage people to do that. And then the third is this sort of trusted advisor mentorship. And I think those are the most important, most valuable mentorship relationships, but they're also the most difficult, because there does have to be a pretty high degree of trust between the two individuals. And so it tends to happen organically. And I've been lucky throughout my career to have gotten to know people who were more senior than me, more experienced than me, and as we developed the friendship, I started asking them advice. Or in some cases, I think back to one of my mentors early in my career. He reached out to me and said, hey, I see some real potential in you, and I want to help you with your career, and I'm going to give you advice.
Really? Wow.
And that was brilliant. And as I reflect on my career and why I've been successful, and coaching that I give to people now that work for me or who I mentor, a lot of it comes back to what he taught me, which is when you're thinking about your career, asking what your next job is going to be is the wrong question, right? You want to think 10 to 15 years down the road and say, where do I want to be in 10 to 15 years? What are the experiences and skills expected of someone in that target role 10 to 15 years from now? And how am I going to acquire those skills and experiences over the next 10 to 15 years? And you develop a strategic roadmap for your career that gets you from point A, where you are today, to point B, where you want to be in 10 or 15 years. I've managed my career since my late 20s that way, when he taught me how to do this. And I think it's made all the difference in my career.